to Mushroom Wonderland.
How's it going, everybody? Aaron Hilliard here with Mushroom Wonderland, and I'm headed out on another foray. I'm going foraging for mushrooms in a conifer forest here in the great Pacific Northwest, and let's go for a walk in the forest. Come with me. Heading into the woods. You can see a lot of this salal brush and a lot of conifer trees. And it's very wet out here. We have reached the height of rainy season here in Washington State, which is a good thing. Mushrooms are going to be happy about this. We had a tree recently fall on the trail, and yeah, it's been raining a little bit. These areas where I see a lot of cedar tree, I just usually keep on walking through there. You can find some mushrooms underneath cedar trees, but they're always saprotrophic. There are no known ectomycorrhizal mushrooms that grow with cedar. If it's a big grove of cedar, maybe keep on going to where you find this fir and hemlock, and this is where you're gonna find the goodies. And I just came across a mushroom right off the side of the trail, kind of caught my eye, and we're gonna take a look at this. This one is right down in here, and it's not rooted very well in the ground there. But check that guy out. Let me wipe him off a little bit. What I'm working with here. All right, there we go. Let's take a look at this mushroom. So this is called Russula, and in Europe they call them brittle gills. I guess they call it a brittle gill because the cell structure of this, especially the stipe, is kind of like polystyrene packing styrofoam, because the cells are kind of like little balls. So if I was to snap this, it's going to snap clean across, where like a chanterelle would really want to get stringy and bend, but a Russula always just snaps. And you can tell it's always got these really white gills, and see how they're not really attached to the stipe right there. It like stops in a perfect little line. Another indicator of this Russula. And so I'm going to show you a couple ways that we test that this be a Russula. So firstly, I'm going to break this stipe and watch how clean it snaps. Wait, oh, it broke away from the cap. That's okay. I'm going to just set the cap down. But we're going to just break this. See that? See how clean that breaks? It really doesn't string off. So this is kind of indicative of something in the Russula family, or Russula family, whatever you want to call it. And then there are quite a few different species of these Russulas growing out here. So the way I'm going to be able to tell if this one is a good edible one or not is the ones that seem to mess up people's stomach have a really peppery taste. So I'm going to flip the camera. So here I am with this Russula, and so it's safe to nibble and spit any mushroom in the world. So even a death cap, you can nibble on it and taste it and then see what it tastes like. And as long as you just make sure to spit all the chunks out, you're going to be fine. And it's okay to hold mushrooms. I'm going to re-emphasize this over and over because people have a lot of mycophobia, fungophobia about touching mushrooms and eating mushrooms, and they're really not that dangerous unless you ingest a whole bunch of them. So we're going to taste a little bit of this cap. And I chew it up. I let it sit in my mouth for a little while. I don't know, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. This one does have a peppery, acrid thing going on. Very peppery. So I've heard these are the ones that you don't want to eat, are the ones that leave a peppery taste in your mouth. And it's got a very viscid cap, really kind of slimy. See that? Oh, coming off my thumb. Yeah, real spicy kind of taste. So this is not the Russula xermapelina. This is one of the varieties that they would consider toxic. Now, I'm not worried about getting sick. I just spit it out. And when I say toxic with one of these, it just means gastric upset. So anyways, here's some ways to identify a Russula. And I just identified that this is not the shrimp Russula. This one's no good to eat. So we're going to toss this back to the forest. And we're going to keep moving on. But there you go. Woo! Peppery. All right, and right here we came across a darker purple Russula. And so this one, let's pick this bad boy. Oh, look at all the blushing on the stipe here and how dark purple that cap is. So that's a pretty mushroom, and I'm gonna give it the sniff test first. That one smells really shrimpy. This one smells a lot like seafood. So, dare I do this again, because I just got a mouthful of really acrid, peppery taste. But again, we got the blushing on the stipe, and then we've got this darker purple cap. That other one, I didn't really like the color of the cap, so it kind of clued me in that it might not be the right one. So we're gonna try a spit and nibble of this one. That actually felt like a cooling sensation on my already spicy tongue from that last one. And yeah, totally different. Not spicy at all. So this one is a good edible. Note the dark purple cap, the white gills, the blushing stipe, which sometimes it doesn't necessarily do that. So the spit and nibble is a really good test for these Russulas. You know, you can always break that stem to make sure it breaks clean and you have that Russula for starters. But this one is definitely Russula xermapelina, the shrimp Russula. It's a pretty big one. And I'm not going to take this home today, so I'm going to show you a way that I help distribute the spores. And it's probably going to piss off some of you people that are really worried about the environment. But it's kind of fun, and it's a cool thing to do with these Russula mushrooms, to just double make sure that this is a Russula. I'm going to flip this camera. Look at that big, beautiful fir tree. There's our shrimp Russula. Ready? Oh, and it just explodes. So I just sent a trillion spores into the atmosphere, as well as disintegrating that mushroom and leaving chunks of it all over the forest floor. I did a massive service to this forest. You can thank me later. And if we look right here, look at all of this going on the bottom of this tree. These are all mush. They're all mushed. And look at how huge these are. These are massive. And then I see more growing right here at the base of this tree. And these are Armillaria. These are honey mushrooms. Look at that. So these are old, decayed honey mushrooms. They've served their purpose. They have emitted their spores into the air to go infect more dead trees. It's just like a couple of dead chunks of tree here. And yeah, these were at one time a young, somewhat fairly decent edible that some people can eat. You can see the ring right there. And then these caps just get really big and wavy and kind of decurrent gill structure. And this is indicators growing in a big cluster on a dead stump like this. So this is Armillaria Mellea, or the common honey mushroom. And these have definitely seen better days. So not going to be collecting any honey mushrooms today, even though I do like them. I think that they're pretty tasty edible when they're younger. Oh, look right here on this log. Got a couple of mushrooms growing. These ones are some of the mushrooms that I was looking at with Alan Rockefeller. We're going to pick this guy, have a look at it. So look at that. Now, this looks familiar, huh? Looks like one of those ones in the wood chips from the Alan Rockefeller video. This is Pluteus cervinus, or the common deer mushroom. And yeah, you can eat this, but not of huge high culinary value. Not a lot of people out wanting to eat these. So, but it's not going to hurt you if you did. If you were in a pinch, if you're lost in the woods. These ones are fairly common, and they're growing on a dead conifer log like this, or conifer wood chips. And so the Pluteus cervinus. There you go, deer mushroom. Let's keep going. All right, it's me and my doggy are walking along, and I look down and I see this little color kind of starting to pop out of the moss right here. And I'm very hopeful that this is something good. I'm kind of excited. Ooh, I see another one popping up right over there. So I think what we have here is a pretty exciting mushroom to find. Something a lot of you people are out here looking for. So I'm going to carefully uncover this guy. I'm going to dig down underneath the side of this. Oh yeah. So I'm starting to see this kind of different looking soil down here. It's this kind of gray ashy soil. So I really want to get underneath it. There we go. See that gray ashy soil down there? It's really weird. I don't know if these mushrooms produce it or they just know where to find it. But right here what we have is a Tricholoma murrillianum, or the Matsutake mushroom, Northwest Matsutake. So beautiful find. So look at the bottom of it. It's got this really kind of gray ashy soil on it. And the stipe is always really tapered like that. And then it often has this kind of tan mottling on it. And this one is completely enclosed. It has not opened, not even a little bit. So this is what they would call a number 1 button. This is the ones that would fetch money at the market. Very nice. And this is in Western Washington beginning in November. These are kind of a cold-loving mushroom, but here they are right now. It hasn't been too extremely cold, but a beautiful mushroom. And if we look down in its hole, you can see there's young primordia little pins starting to grow. So I'm going to just carefully kind of cover that spot back up. And then if I look just to the side of this, you can see this like a little lump in the moss here. And this kind of usually will clue me in. Look at that. We got 2 more little babies, just really young. So I'm just going to carefully cover those back up, and they're just too young to pick right yet. But I do see one right here. And look at that. This one is a good size. So we're going to dig down. We really want to get the stipe and everything here. There we go. Boom. Look at that. Another beautiful Matsutake mushroom here in the Northwest. Tricholoma magna verde, or Tricholoma murrillianum. This is a wonderful culinary mushroom. They're really kind of rubbery. When you go to cut the stem, it's going to squeak a little bit because it's really kind of a rubbery, dense mushroom. And I find that these hold up really well in a roast, pork roast or a beef pot roast. So 2 beautiful little Matsutake buttons. And so another thing about Matsutake that you might know about is that they've got a unique smell. They've got a very unique smell. So once you've smelled Matsutake and you know what they smell like, you will never forget that smell. And this, gosh, it's hard to describe the smell. A lot of mushrooms for me are hard to describe. People will be like, it smells like cucumbers. And I'm like, I do not smell like cucumber. David Aurora says that they smell kind of like red hots and dirty socks. And if I have a good enough imagination and I squint my eyes just enough, yeah, I can smell that. Yeah, that's good. That's it. So it's got kind of a musty smell to me, honestly. They kind of smell, gosh, a little bit like sweet mothballs to me. I don't know. Some people really love these. Some people try them and they're just not the biggest fan of them. But they're always exciting to find because the Japanese variety of these, Tricholoma Matsutake, that grow near Nagano and Hiroshima. They grow on the west slope of this certain mountain range, and they can fetch like $100 a mushroom. So it's kind of a tradition that's sort of dying, but they still really value these in Japan. And so commercial pickers will pick these, and these end up in markets around the world. These ones that are growing right here in the Northwest, but these would fetch about $20 a pound from a buyer, and they would probably sell them for $50 or $60 a pound. But these ones are going to come home with me. And you can really hear that wind howling out here. I can see my breath. So it's beautiful. Man, this is forests in the Northwest in Washington State in November. And this is when you're going to find Matsutake. My grandma's stepmom, so like my step-great-grandma, her name was Toshi, and she was from Japan, and so she taught my grandma all about Matsutake and how to find them and where to pick them, and they would string them up on strings and hang them in the window to dry. She taught my grandma Anna how to find Matsutake, and so my grandma Anna, before she died, I was just a boy, but she would tell me about these Matsutake, these ever elusive mushrooms, and so I just have always had an affection for those kind of mushrooms, and they're always exciting for me to find. I was probably 20 years old before I found my first Matsutake, and I thought my grandma would be proud. You hear me talk about my grandma, but she gave me this love for mushrooms, so just an homage to Anna Backman, my grandma. Thanks, Grandma. Oh, look at all these pretty guys. These are growing in quite a little cluster here on the end of this log. And if we look underneath, we see this kind of dark purple spore underneath. And it would indicate to me that these are the Hypholoma fasciculare, or the sulfur tuft. Talked about these in several videos, but they just keep showing up. This is a poisonous mushroom, one of Northwest's more toxic natives. So when you see these beautiful clusters of mushrooms growing on the ends of logs like this, we just leave that alone. A little nasty out today. I love it. But be careful on these days of the widowmakers and branches falling out of trees. As we've seen in this video, there's branches and trees laying all over the trails, and they could be laying on you. So be super duper careful. So here's some kind of cool mushrooms. Look right down in here. And the spores come from underneath these purplish looking forked gills. The caps are very much concave. Collect a little rain in there, and they really kind of have this like dry feel to them. And these are known as Lacaria laccata or Lacaria bicolor. They go by both names kind of. And you could eat these. They are an edible mushroom, but just the texture is kind of weird, so a lot of people don't care for those. See if we can look closely at the cap here. There we go. And as you look down the stipe, it's just long and kind of plain. So yeah, Lacaria laccata. This is a conifer wood-loving mushroom. I really feel like I need to reassure everybody every time I pluck a mushroom, because I get a lot of comments about like, how dare you pick that mushroom? It didn't do anything to you. There's a lot of misinformation behind that. Picking the fruiting bodies is not going to damage the mycelium. The mycelium's function is to grow underground and chew up usable food source, cellulose from the tree, which is a form of sugar that the mycelium needs to grow. And then when it's time to spread its spores, it's going to go ahead and grow these fruiting bodies. And that does not mean the mycelium underneath the ground is dead. It is very much alive. It is just spreading its spores, and more continue to grow off of that same mycelium. You do not hurt the vegetative part of the mushroom by plucking the fruiting body. And look here, we got some fungi growing on some trees. We got a really chunky Fomitopsis species growing on this dead snag. So this is a conifer, and that's what the Fomitopsis normally grows with. And then right here we have an old hardwood, an old alder, and this one's got some beautiful Pleurotus, some oyster mushrooms growing right here on the side of the tree. These ones are pretty well spent. They're old and waterlogged and probably full of bugs, so we're not going to pick those today. But yeah, it's always kind of refreshing to see oyster mushrooms growing in the woods. All right, so we walked in a big old loop and found quite a few mushrooms. I did quite a few interesting ones. Shrimp Russula, the Matsutake, some Pluteus, some oyster mushrooms. Quite a productive day out here in November in the Pacific Northwest. And we hope you hit subscribe and like this video and leave a comment so we can keep this channel going and growing and getting bigger. So thanks again for your support, and stay tuned for the next video. Thanks a lot.